Tonight we are going to finish up our corned beef dinner. So earlier we popped the corned beef roast in the oven, and then we prepped our dough for our focaccia, our sourdough discard focaccia. So it's been, rising right now. And now we're going to prep the rest of it. We're going to be doing a kind of a cheesy scalloped potato with some Irish cheese, a roasted root vegetables, and some braised Brussels sprouts. So let's start with our potatoes. So I'm using 4 russet potatoes, and I'm going to just give these a quick peel. And then we're going to slice them pretty thin to put in our little pie dish here for our scalloped potatoes. We're going to do our scalloped potatoes in some chicken broth, a little bit of cream, garlic, salt, and green onions. And then halfway through baking, we'll pour some shredded Dubliner cheese on it. I'll peel these up, get there, but I got my Irish decorations out for St. Patty's Day coming up, and I've been in the mood for Irish food. So yesterday we had Irish lamb stew with soda bread, which was absolutely delicious. And today we'll do our corned beef dinner, which is one of my favorite meals, but I only make it like once or twice a year and right around St. Patrick's Day, but it's delicious. And I'm hoping that we'll have enough leftovers to make some corned beef sandwiches tomorrow, because it was a pretty large loaf or brisket when I got it at Costco. And in Costco it only comes in extra large sizes. Okay, I'm going to start with 3 potatoes and see how they fill up my pie dish, and then I'll peel my 4th one if I need it. Sometimes when you cut them thinner, they spread out a lot more than you anticipate. So, and these are pretty good sized potatoes here. Okay, so we're going to do a thin cut on this, a slice. So just think of if you ever had scalloped potatoes before. They're just thinly sliced potatoes that will kind of cook in like a creamy broth until they're nice and tender and well seasoned. But they are pretty delicious. You could use, if you had a mandolin, you could use a mandolin to slice these up. But again, I always like to do, what can I do? Making the least amount of dishes that doesn't add a whole bunch of time to prep. So we're going to spread these out in here, kind of splicing them all together, almost like dominoes laying down like flat. And the trick is you don't want them paper thin, but you don't want them thick. So if these are about the size that I'm doing them. So it'd be much thicker than a potato chip, but thinner than a French fry. And that's because you just want them to cook up and be nice and tender as they cook, because they take about, 40 minutes to cook to get to the nice tenderness that you want. Put these out, and we're going to spread them the opposite way. There we go. And then chop through this guy. Scalloped potatoes, I feel like I ate all the time as a kid, but I rarely make it now as an adult. But I remember my parents used to grab, like when we were little, like you could buy scalloped potato in a box. And it was like dehydrated potato slices that you then like put milk and cream on it. They were delicious if I remember as a kid. I don't know if I would still like them now. Okay, I'm definitely going to chop up that one. I thought I would need 4, but just making sure. Sometimes I'll make like a batch of fries and I just like realize I grab like a whole bunch of potato, like big potatoes, and they make a lot more fries than you need. There we go. Do a quick peel on this. I will say, I've gone through several peelers in my life, and I think this is what, I don't know, a Copco, I don't even know, I got it at Target, but I love this style of peeler. It works really well for peeling. My mom bought me this like specialty peeler once while she was in Germany. Apparently it was like all the rage there, and it's the worst peeler ever. I feel like I'm going to like skin my hand alive when I'm using it. And it just sits in my utensil drawer, never getting used unless I can't find this one. But I think like OXO makes a good peeler like this. They work great. It's just, you know, once you get the feel of a good peeler, you don't want to go somewhere else. I keep thinking that she bought me like a left-handed peeler because it just is so awkward in my hands when I try to use it. Let's get all of these and fill them up. And I like to do them kind of resting on top of each other instead of just kind of in, mainly because presentation-wise, they look a little nicer this way, but then they just cook up and have all the nice seasonings on it. Okay, so we've got our potatoes in here. Now I am going to, this is some warm water that I'm going to mix with some chicken broth. And that's just going to give it a nice little savory punch to it. So we're just going to put a spoonful of chicken broth in here. I'm going to kind of let it dilute and mix up. While this is diluting and going into there, I'm going to put a little bit of butter in. So I'm going to take this butter. You don't need too much, so I'm going to use about 2 tablespoons of butter. And because we're going to also be using cream in this, and then we'll be topping everything off with cheese once it's baked for a little bit. But you're going to just kind of slice it into small, thin pats that we're just going to kind of lay over the top of our potatoes so that as it cooks, the butter will melt down into the potatoes. And then, of course, it's going to be cooking in that rich kind of creamy broth to give it a lot of lovely flavor as well. So we've got our butter pats. And then I'm going to use, I think, 2 green onions as well to top it off. This will give it a nice bright pop of green, but a lovely kind of mellow onion flavor. Green onions or chives, they have that nice onion flavor, but it's not too powerful. So they're great for kind of just adding a little bit of onion kick to it, as well as a lovely pop of green. So I'm just going to cut these down. Once I get kind of closer to the whiter ends of it, I'm going to save those to use in with my Brussels sprouts. So I'm not going to use those kind of right there. So we'll take this. I'm going to sprinkle it over the top. And that will allow the onions kind of like roast and cook in lovely with it. And then I think we've got this chicken broth almost diluted. There we go. And then I'm just going to pour a little. I made 1.5 cups, but you're really just going to see where it ends up on the potatoes. You don't want it completely covered. You want them about halfway covered in this broth. And then we'll add a little bit of cream to it. Mix this up. Again. There we go. And I'm going to scoop some of that chicken bouillon down. And then we're going to add a little bit of cream. I'm just going to put it back in here just to get some of that bouillon mix in here. You need just a little bit of cream. This is about 1/3 cup. Not too much because the cream will cook and the broth will evaporate some. So it will pack a nice creamy punch. I'm going to pour it over, covering the whole tops of it. Beautiful. And then we're going to sprinkle with a little bit of garlic salt. And I do have my oven preheated to 375. And so we're going to bake it at that. And in about 20 minutes, we'll take it out and we're going to sprinkle some cheese on it. So I'm just going to put it right here. I've got both my ovens going today because we have my big 13.25 quart pot in the oven over there, and that just takes up the majority of it. Okay, now we've got our scalloped potatoes in, which takes like the longest time to kind of cook out of our 3 vegetable sides we're cooking. Now let's prep our root vegetables. We're gonna do carrots, sweet potato, parsnip, which is like a lemony kind of carrot, and some turnips. And we're going to peel them and then chop them up, coat them with some olive oil and balsamic glaze and honey and a little bit of garlic salt, and then we'll roast those. And they'll just be a really lovely roasted root vegetable. with a little bit of a kind of a sweet savory flavor to it, which pairs up nicely. You know, most of the time when I think of like Irish food, I'm not thinking of high cuisine. I'm thinking of like very like homebody foods. So I kind of like to elevate some of the like the common ingredients used in Irish cooking, but just make it a little bit more tasty. So I know like it's really common to serve corned beef with like boiled cabbage and potatoes, but to be honest, who likes just straight up plain boiled cabbage? There's not a lot of flavor there. So I like to make it, you know, things a little bit more bougie. So we're gonna do some Brussels sprouts, some braised Brussels sprouts, and then some fancy potatoes. Give it a little bit more taste to it. Also, I want my kids to eat it, and my kids aren't gonna eat straight up cabbage. Okay, this parsnip is very funny shaped. It's got like a kink in it. I'm gonna get our sweet potato. I'm just gonna peel all of my vegetables at one time. That way it will be easier to chop them up and then put them on a roasting tray. There we go. And get any of these kind of deep crooks in our sweet potato. Perfect. I love sweet potatoes. I'm like, not very many in my family like it. Luckily my parents love it, but a good sweet potato is just so delicious. Growing up, we used to have them a lot. They got like, I feel like in America, the like health food kick happened in like the late 90s, early 2000s. And I think sweet potatoes were like the first thing on that. Oh, switch out your potato for a sweet potato. And so my mom, of course, made like sweet potatoes like several times a week. And then it was also like spinach and quinoa. Just lots of different things that like popped up, and I always just remember those things being so popular back then. And fish burgers, which I, to be honest, am not a huge fan of a fish burger. There we go. We're almost got all of these peeled up. Most people, I feel like, shun the turnip because I don't think they know how to cook it well. On itself, it's kind of a bland root vegetable, but like roasted here with honey and balsamic and olive oil, it brings out the natural sweetness in it, and it's just lovely. It does have a bit of a kick to it, but I feel like it's one of those vegetables that people just kind of like, ugh, turnip, because it gives, you know, everyone thinks of it as like the poor man's food. So here are our root vegetables. We're gonna chop these up. I'm gonna start with my sweet potato. And now that I'm gonna try to get all of our vegetables to be around the same size so that they cook up evenly. We don't want any to be cut smaller than others because you want them to all get to the right tenderness at the right time. And let's cut this guy in half. So we've got our sweet potatoes. Let me grab my roasting tray over here. That way I can start moving my ingredients onto here and free up some space. Cool. I also love, another great vegetable you can add to this is beets. I love a good roasted beet. I just didn't have any, so we're opted, but that adds a beautiful like pop of red to our cooking. Cut these guys. Perfect. And I know you could just do this with sweet potatoes and carrots if you wanted, but I do feel like the parsnip, especially if you've never had one, it has kind of a lemony taste to it. And they're just lovely. They look like a white carrot, but they are a really lovely root vegetable. One of the things growing up that my parents always made was parsnips and sweet potato mash. We always had it on our Thanksgiving, like that was always part of our big main Thanksgiving meal. And it's just delicious. You know, I feel like I grew up eating a lot of slightly different foods because you know, my mom is from Sweden, and so we would have like rutabaga mash, which if you don't know what a rutabaga is, it's actually, the other name it goes by is like a Jerusalem turnip. And so it's just like a big, huge root vegetable that has like an orangish color to it and a really distinct flavor. But again, that's one I absolutely love as well. Okay, we've got our carrots. I'm gonna chop off the ends of our carrots here because those are never really good. And then we're gonna give them a nice chop and put them on our plate. And then we're gonna cut up one yellow onion. There we go. Chop these through. Carrots, you can go a little bit smaller than the other ones because they're a bit firmer than the other vegetables, which means they take a slightly bit longer to cook up. Let's give this guy one more cut. He's a little big. And then we're gonna chop up our yellow onion here. Yellow onions are great for roasting because they have a higher sugar content in them than say red onions or white onions. So yellow, Valdalia, those are great for roasting. Let's get this slimy. Sometimes you get the onion skin off. There we go. Get one of those on there. And then I'm just gonna chop this in half and give it a small dice that we can throw into our pan. Here. And now, even though red onions are pretty and they give a pop of color, they have like the least amount of flavor of onions, and so they're best served raw, like on salads or burgers. Let me grab my olive oil. We're gonna give everything a nice coating of olive oil, so about, I wanna say maybe 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And then I'm going to use some balsamic glaze, which is simply balsamic vinegar that has been reduced with a little bit of sugar added into it. I'm going to kind of squirt these over. It won't have a vinegary taste, so don't think just because it's made from vinegar it will have a vinegary taste. It won't, but it will have a lovely like slight tanginess. Then we're going to use a nice drizzle of honey. Got to be careful with this because I don't want to put too much out there. And I'm going to just twist it. There we go. And of course, garlic salt. You could use regular salt if you wanted, but I feel like garlic salt always adds a nice little flavor. And a nice sprinkle over the top. One thing that's nice about garlic salt is it doesn't have quite as much sodium in as its straight up salt because it is like garlic juice that has been rehydrated with you know, salt. They've dehydrated like garlic juice and the salt together, so it's a bit more flaky and not as strong. So we've got everything coated. Perfect. Now I'm gonna just give my hands a quick wash, and then we're gonna pop these in the oven with our potatoes. So I'm going to put these right in here with our potatoes and let them roast. So now we've got a couple of things to do. Let me clear up my area. We're going to prep our Brussels sprouts. I do love Brussels sprouts, but they do need a little prep before you can use them, which means we've got to cut them, quarter them, cut off their little stem chunk just so that they're got a nice texture on them. So we're gonna prep our Brussels sprouts that we'll braise in our pan. And then we're gonna shred some Berliner or Dubliner cheese. And then we've gotta do our focaccia, which, let's actually prep our focaccia first since these don't need long to cook. And our focaccia needs to go in the oven soon. So here is our sourdough discard focaccia. We made it earlier. We did lots of stretches and foldeds like you do with a sourdough. We did use yeast in this because it's not a sourdough focaccia, it's a sourdough discard. So we need a little bit of the yeast to get the rising action. So what we're going to do for the focaccia, this is like the fun part. We're gonna like stick our fingers and poke it down and make all these fun little dimples in it. And that's kind of gives you your focaccia its texture. And it's kind of fun. This is like, I feel like what the doughboy would have been made out of. So, and that is simply we're gonna be drizzling with olive oil, but it allows those oil to get in there and give you just a nice kind of crunchy texture to it. So let's do our drizzle of olive oil over. You need about 2 tablespoons of it. So I'm just gonna try to be careful as I drizzle over it. And then we'll do kind of some rolling back and forth. There we go. And I'm just gonna see if we can slide it down. Because if you try to coat everything, it's just gonna, you'll just end up with so much olive oil on it. Okay. And I'm just gonna try to dip and cover the rest. There we go. And this olive oil is gonna give it that nice crunchy crust to the focaccia. Okay, now we're gonna get some rosemary, some garlic salt, and I did want to put a couple green onions on here. So let me do that real quick. I think the green onions will give it a lovely pop of color and they have a beautiful taste to them. Chives would also work great. A lot of people take making focaccia like art. They make pretty crazy designs on top of it because it bakes up fairly nicely. There we go. So you could literally press your herbs in and make a whole beautiful decoration if you wanted. But for me, I'm gonna just use rosemary, garlic, salt, green onions, and a little bit of pepper. So we're gonna sprinkle our green onions over the top. This will also give it a really pretty color to it. Beautiful. And now I'm gonna take my fresh rosemary. I've got 2 sprigs left, which is all we really need. And I'm gonna go back and I'm just gonna kind of peel off the leaves and put them on here. And with fresh herbs, like especially rosemary, they give a pretty good punch with it. And now you could, if you're in a pinch and you don't have fresh, you can definitely use dried with it. It will just have a slightly different texture.
You have a question, what type of bread is that?
This is sourdough discard focaccia, which is like a really crusty Italian bread. You cover it with a lot of oil, and there's oil in the recipe, which just gives it that really lovely chewy crust on it. And it's a thinner bread. So we do this. We're gonna do a little garlic salt. You could also use like coarse salt if you wanted to. I just like the garlic salt. It adds a nice little punch of flavor. Here. And then we're gonna use a little bit of pepper. I will say, focaccia is a pretty looking bread, and if you go online and search up like focaccia bread art, you're gonna see some really amazing things.
You have a question, do you share your recipes?
Yes, I do. It typically takes me a couple days to get them posted, but we do post recipe cards. Also, we do post our live videos on the link in our page, so you can always go back and reference them. And I always try to tell people the exact amounts of ingredients I'm using so they can hopefully recreate the same magic at home. Okay, before we put this in the oven, I'm going to take out our giant Dutch oven, which has our corned beef roasted. So you take it out about 20 minutes before you're ready to take it out and cut it, because it needs to sit. And then once we take it out, we'll pop our focaccia in. So I'm gonna grab this. This is my huge honkin' pot. It weighs like 50, steam. It weighs a lot. It is a 13.25 quart pan, and it is heavy. Okay, and I'll give you guys a quick peek before. This is our thing. So that is our corned beef roast. If you've never had corned beef before, Don't be alarmed by the color. It is always pink. It is not raw. That's been cooking for 3+ hours. It is just a bright pink because corned beef, not like a corn, but corned with an ED on it, is a brisket that has been brined in a salt mixture with some seasonings. And it came about, I'm gonna change my temperature up to 450 because we're gonna bake at 450. So let's cancel that one. My corned beef was baking at 350 for the last one. Perfect. And then I'm gonna set my timer for 20 minutes because it should be done then. Okay, but corned beef was created back in a time when they needed to preserve their beef because you would slaughter a whole cow, but you couldn't eat a whole cow. So they would soak it in salt, which is called corning it, to preserve it. You know, and similar to how we do jerky, except they didn't dry it out. But that's what gives it its color and its flavor. So it's just salty and pink because I guess the myoglobin in it, which is that kind of protein in the blood, stays when it. So, but it's delicious, but it's supposed to be pink. Okay, we're gonna prep our Brussels sprouts, which first we're gonna start by cutting off the little tops of them. If you've never had a Brussels sprout before, I will say they're similar to cabbage, but a slightly stronger flavor profile. I feel like cabbage is like a really mild Brussels sprout. So similar to that, but these pack a bit more of a punch. And it's funny, like cabbage, broccoli, kale, they're all in the same family, meaning they all originated back then and like from one plant. Which is interesting to see how they have evolved over time. But they all kind of have that, like, I think they're called like crucifers or something like that, somewhere like that. But they're delicious when prepared correctly, which is not boiling them or poaching it. You've got to have a nice braise on it or with a lovely season. A lot of times I'll cook my Brussels sprouts with bacon, which is always a hit in our family because I think if you cook anything with bacon, it's delicious. But tonight we had bacon for breakfast, so we are going to just cook them, braise them with a little bit of butter and garlic salt, and just kind of brown them up. But first we want to kind of chop off all of these little things. I say I do love Brussels sprouts, but they are kind of a pain to work with. And then we're gonna go through and we're gonna quarter each one. So, just like that. And if you really, some people get really into it and they like separate all the leaves. I don't have time for that. That's a lot of dedication. I like to make food that is delicious but practical. If it takes too long to make or too many steps, then it's out. Unless it's somebody's birthday, and then they'll get the extra bonus. But for weeknight food or whatnot, or like today's a Sunday dinner, so we'll have like my parents in, I do something a little bit special. I don't want to be too crazy with the prep because I want to live my life too, you know? I don't want to be in the kitchen 24/7. And I know a lot of people think, oh, you cook all the time. And I was like, well, I cook 2 main meals a day. I mean, our breakfast is most of the time our like quick on the go breakfast, unless it's the weekend and then we do a brunch. But then it's dinner, but it's meals I have to cook anyways for our family. So every food I cook that you guys see is something that I'm serving my family because we've got to eat, and I am not about to waste money on groceries because gosh, grocery prices are killing and it's crazy. And you know, when we're a family of 7 and then my parents half the time, so up to 9, groceries can get expensive. Because especially with growing teenage boys who feel like they need to eat everything in the house. So we've got our Brussels sprouts all quartered up here. And now I'm going to put a little bit of butter in my frying pan. I'm using a non-stick.
Someone said they do Brussels sprouts with pecans.
Oh yeah, I think that would taste really good. You could do it so many ways. I feel like Brussels sprouts are really versatile. You just have to get, creative. My sister makes like a Brussels sprouts with sriracha, but she does like the shaved, and she asked me to help her prep her Brussels sprouts one time, which I thought was going to be this. No, I had to peel every single leaf off for it, and I was like, never again, never helping you with Brussels sprouts. But I've had them with like a sriracha sauce, and they were delicious. And bacon, I feel like they're really good. They just need a little jazzing up, you know, straight up on their own, and nobody wants a steamed Brussels sprout. But jazz it up some, it'll be delicious. Speaking of jazzing up, I'm gonna grab my garlic out of the fridge for this, but we'll have our butter melting, and then we're gonna brown up our garlic. Because nothing is better than garlic. Sauteed garlic. And then I've got my Brussels sprouts. I'm gonna put in a spoonful of garlic in here. So about 2 to 3 cloves. I'm just gonna put this right on top of that butter so it will help melt. And then I'm gonna chop up this remaining, these green onions, because I put them in there, a little delicate. Nice oniony flavor, but not overpowering it. So we'll use up this one, and then we'll use up the little stems on here, which pack a bit more oniony punch, which are better cooked up than they are like served as a garnish. There we go. And this will just add a nice little punch to our Brussels sprouts. There we go. I know, I feel like in the 90s, when I was growing up, because I'm 37 now, I just turned 37, but I feel like the vegetables we had growing up versus the vegetables we serve our kids now, everything was like frozen vegetables. So here's your frozen mixed vegetable, or here's your frozen bag of Brussels sprouts. You know, potatoes were the only thing that were slightly different. And I think that's why so many kids didn't like vegetables, because a bag of frozen vegetables are just meh. You know, in a pinch, they're fine, but they're not flavorful and delicious. You know, it's like when I met, you know, my husband, he was not a huge vegetable fan, but I think like most of, you know, my counterpart of my age group, they grow up eating frozen vegetables. And now he eats so many more vegetables than he did when I first met. It's because you got to add the flavor. So here we've got in here our green onions and our butter and our garlic, and we're just sauteing them up until they're nice and crispy and golden, and then we'll throw in our Brussels sprouts. But while we are waiting, let me clear this off because we are going to shred some Dubliner cheese. Figured if we're gonna do an Irish dinner, we should use some Irish cheese on our potatoes. There. I'm not sure what makes it truly Irish, probably because it's like, if you didn't know this, but butter from like Europe and Ireland is slightly different than the butter in America, because we add more milk solids into our butter versus they have a higher fat content and less milk solids. They have like a really strict policy on it, which is why if you get like a Kerrygold or a Bulgaria, those are much creamier and smoother butters, and that's just because they're not allowed to have as much milk solids in theirs. So I'm assuming their cheeses probably follow also a pretty strict thing. So look, we've got a nice browning on our garlic. So we're going to pop in our Brussels sprouts. And then I'm just gonna give them a quick toss in there to kind of coat them all with that butter. And we're gonna just let them kind of slowly saute on kind of a medium temperature until they get a little bit tender and turn a nice vibrant green. That's what I always tell everyone with like broccoli or Brussels sprouts or green beans, any of those things, when they get a nice vibrant green when you're cooking them, that is when they're that perfect like tenderness. And they get a bit more vivid, and that's when you know they're ready. Okay, so we've got them all kind of coated. Now, let's get our cheese ready. So I'm just gonna flip over to my clean side. And we're gonna open up. It smells good. I love cheese. Can't go wrong with cheese. And I'm just gonna start shredding it, and we're going to be sprinkling this on top of our scalloped potatoes. So I just need enough to kind of cover it, which will probably be around 1 to 2 cups. You know, shedding cheese isn't as bad as people think it is. It's not too time consuming. It gets hard is when you get down to like the very end of your block, and then you've got to really delicately like shred it. But look, I've got about a cup already in no time. So we're gonna pull these here. There we go. And let me actually taste the cheese. Very similar to a white cheddar. It has maybe a little bit more of an earthy taste to it if you've never had a Dubliner cheese, but delicious. I mean, you can't go wrong with most cheeses. There we go. And just a little bit more, you know. Never go wrong with too much cheese. There we go. Okay. So we've got our cheese. I'm going to take out my thing out of the oven. Here is our scalloped potatoes. They're starting to cook up lovely.
Yeah, a question. What's the name of the cheese over there?
This is a Dubliner cheese. So Dubliner, it's like by Kerrygold. It's an Irish cheese. So not pretty simple cheese. Okay. We are going to carefully put this over the top of our cheese, or over our scalloped potato, and this is going to just give it a lovely cheesy crust. Beautiful. Okay. And okay, let's pop this guy back in the oven, and then I'm going to bring our heat up to about 450 in here. Well, you know what? My other oven is already at 450, so we can pop and take a peek at the focaccia while this there, because you want to have it a little bit higher to get that cheese nice and milky. Oh, look how beautiful the focaccia. Oh, let's see if I can rotate it. There we go. It's got a nice golden crust. That's actually going to be done in just a few minutes. Let's finish up our braised Brussels sprouts, and then dinner will be almost ready.
You have a request to explain the baked corned beef again?
Yes. Here, we can actually take a quick peek at it. So you essentially buy a corned beef roast at the store. This is hot. These Dutch ovens can stay hot forever. So there it is. So this is a corned beef roast. You buy it in a package. It's almost like in a big like plastic shield, and it has lots of juices in it. Seasoning packet. I put it in my Dutch oven like 3 hours ago. It takes 3 hours to cook. And you simply lay it in there, and then you add enough water to cover it up to the top, but not over the top of the brisket. And then you add the seasonings in. I also added in 1 chopped up onion and some bay leaves in there to give it a nice seasoning. And then I put the lid on it and cooked it at 350 for 3 hours, and then you take it out and you let it sit for just a few minutes. But let's go grab that focaccia, because that guy is pretty much done.
And the prep video is up.
Yes, it is up. That shows you. It's not super much to do. It's a really easy dish to make. I'm going to grab it.
13 minutes is all.
Yeah, 13 minutes. It's not, and not even that, because we made the focaccia during that time too. Beautiful. So here is our focaccia, using our sourdough discard. It's such a beautiful bread. And if you don't know what corned beef is, it is a brisket, a beef brisket that has been like in a brined and a salty mixture, which gives it that, like it's a very salty meat, but it's gonna look pink. So it's not going to, it's not raw, it's just pink because that's what it looks like. Okay, let's give it a little bit of garlic salt over the top of this. There we go. And then we're doing this, you see we're getting that nice browning color on our Brussels sprouts. That's what you want. You want them nice kind of crispy edges there. Okay. Beautiful. They're just about tender. And let's pull out our roast vegetables. I'm going to give them a check, see if they are ready or if they need to go back in for a few more minutes. So here are our roasted vegetables. We were sweet potatoes, carrots, parsnips.
You have a question about the corned beef? Is it a thin cut? It's just the full brisket,
it's
right?
It's a brisket. So if you know what a brisket looks like, it is literally the same thing as a beef brisket. Let's see, almost tender. They have a few more minutes on these. You got like almost there. It is a beef brisket, so like a whole side. It has a fat strip on one side, and it's pretty thick. I'm actually going to take it out in just a second, and we're going to cut it up, and you'll see it. But it is literally like, it's about that thick, and it's long. So it's thick and long, and it is just like a brisket, but it's a bright pink. Okay, we'll take that out in just a second. I am going to get a cutting board because we're going to pop this on a cutting board so it stops cooking on the edge.
You have a comment that they love your kitchen. How many ovens do you have?
I have 2 ovens. So I have my stove oven right here, which is I rarely use as much as I friend. And then I have a microwave oven combo over there, but it has all the bells and whistles.
And how many fridges?
How many fridges do we have? We have 4 full-size fridges, but we are a large family. I'm justifying my 4 fridges right now. So I have 5 kids, and we also cook for my parents, so we're cooking for 9 people. We have a fridge dedicated to our drinks. Then we have, it's my meat fridge, which has all my meat for the week and whatnot. Then we have my produce fridge, and then we have our inside fridge that has just like what you grab at the day. Sorry, I know people think these are the most ridiculous things ever. They're my bear paw mitts. I love them. But let me grab that cutting board so we can pull the focaccia off. But I did not go out and buy 4 fridges. I will tell you that. Every time the ice maker on one of my fridges broke, but the fridge was fine, we replaced the fridge because it costs about the same amount of money to get your ice maker fixed as it is to get a new fridge. So, being the economical person that I was, why fix it when you can buy new?
You have a question? How'd the graham crackers turn out?
Oh, excellent. Well, we're going to post that video from the s'mores last night. They were absolutely delicious. And they had the perfect crunch on them. Let me see if I can show you the bottom of this crust. See how you got a beautiful golden, it's very hot though, but lovely crust. We'll cut into that in just a minute, let it sit, but I will say focaccia is just the most beautiful bread out there. Okay, let me get our Brussels sprouts are just about done, so I'm going to turn these on low. Let's take out our corned beef. I'm going to get my cutting board, and then I'm going to put it inside a baking tray because it's sitting in juices, and if you pull it out, it's going to get a little juice run over. So I always just put them inside one of my big cutting boards, or my big baking trays, so that if the juice overflows, it overflows in that, and I don't have a mess to clean up. So I've got my thing. It's just, you know, things that make things a little bit easier. So anytime you have a juicy meat, put it inside one of your baking trays, and it will be a game changer. Let's bring this right here. turn that. Still hot. Always be wary of your cast iron things. They retain their heat for so long. Beautiful. So, all of these seeds on top, those are all seasonings. Almost every corned beef roast comes with a seasoning pack in it. Use it, even if you think you don't like those things on there, use it. Now you see how big this guy is?
Do you have any sourdough to go with your meal tonight?
This is our sourdough discard focaccia. So it is, it has yeast in it, so it's not a true sourdough, but it has our focaccia in it. Let's see. So it is, it has yeast in it, so it's not a true sourdough, but it has our focaccia in it. Let's see. Our timer, so when we turn it off. Beautiful.
And then you have a question, are those peppercorns on the...
Yes, so you have some peppercorns, and I believe it's mustard seed, crushed bay leaf. Again, this is the seasoning packet that comes with it. I did add 1 onion to it, and then I added 2 bay leaves that are in there to season it. But you gotta cover it to the top because it is a very salty broth. Let me move, I'm gonna cut it over here because it's just easier to maneuver. Right here. So here, it's pretty impressive, look. And then I'm gonna also remind, for those who've never had it before, it is going to be pink on the inside, but it is not raw or even medium rare. It is well cooked through because, look, it is just a pink meat. It is just, that's because it's been brined. So we're gonna, but it is a delicious meat, and if you have leftovers after you make it, you can make the most delicious corned beef sandwiches. Okay, let's get our root vegetables out. We'll get our scalloped potatoes out, and we're gonna serve up dinner. Okay. Here are our root vegetables. That is carrots, parsnips, turnip, onions, and sweet potatoes. You grab, kind of coat them in all the lovely seasonings. Beautiful. Let's see. Yeah, much more tender now, so you can see how they kind of just smush right through. Perfect, that's what you want, a nice tender vegetable. And then I'm gonna go grab, well, I'll start plating, and then I'm gonna grab our potatoes out because our potatoes, the cheese is still melting. So, how we will serve up our dinner tonight, of course, the star of the show right here is our beautiful corned beef brisket. And we'll have a lovely serving of braised Brussels sprouts. A little bit bougier than boiled cabbage. We're gonna have our root vegetables. And then I'm gonna go here with that. We're gonna have it with our focaccia, and then let me grab those potatoes right out of the oven. And our beautiful scalloped potatoes. And get in there, and we'll do a nice serving with our Dubliner cheese on top. Lovely. And a cheesy, creamy broth. If I can, there we go. Look at that lovely cheesy potato. And of course, we're gonna serve it up with a nice serving of focaccia bread. Look at that nice fluffy crust in there. That is going to be our Irish dinner tonight. Well guys, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and feel free to send us a message or comment if you have any recipes you'd like to try. We love to explore new foods in this house. But again, thank you so much for joining. Don't forget to like and subscribe.